Most people think stress is something you feel, but the body experiences it as something that happens to you. Long before you notice stress emotionally, your biology has already begun to change how it functions. What's most surprising is not how stress enters the body, but how quietly it reshapes it from the inside. This video is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The information presented reflects general scientific understanding of human biology and health and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical guidance. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional regarding any medical concerns, symptoms, or health decisions. Viewer discretion is advised, and individual experiences may vary. Stress operates as a physical signal in the body long before it is labeled as an emotion, and this distinction matters more than most people realize. When we describe stress only as something we feel, we unintentionally reduce a complex biological process into a psychological mood, overlooking how deeply the body is involved. Stress begins as information, processed by the brain in milliseconds, translated into chemical messages, and distributed throughout the body with remarkable efficiency. It is not abstract or symbolic. It is measurable, observable, and physical. Heart rate changes, blood vessels adjust their tone, hormones enter circulation, and entire systems shift their priorities in response to a single internal assessment of safety or threat. The brain's role in stress is not to judge truth, fairness, or intention. Its primary task is prediction and protection. When the brain detects uncertainty, pressure, or perceived danger, it initiates a cascade designed to prepare the body for action. This response evolved to help humans survive short, intense challenges, but modern life presents a different pattern. Instead of brief threats followed by recovery, the body now encounters ongoing demands, deadlines, social pressure, and constant information. The brain does not distinguish between a physical predator and a persistent psychological demand. Both activate the same biological machinery, sending signals that the body must prepare, conserve energy in certain areas, and mobilize resources in others. Once this signal is released, the body responds as a unified system. Stress hormones influence how cells use energy, how blood moves through tissues, and how organs communicate with one another. Muscles receive signals to remain ready, digestion becomes less urgent, and the immune system shifts its focus. These changes are not mistakes. They reflect a coordinated effort to support survival in a perceived emergency. The problem arises not because stress responses exist, but because they remain active for too long. When the signal does not turn off, the body adapts to its presence, adjusting its baseline functioning around constant alertness. This is why stress cannot be separated cleanly into mental and physical categories. The body does not experience stress as an idea. It experiences it as chemistry, electricity, and pressure. Blood pressure rises not because someone feels overwhelmed, but because the nervous system has received instructions to prioritize circulation to certain areas. Sleep becomes shallow not due to poor discipline, but because the brain continues scanning for potential threats even during rest. Fatigue appears not because the body lacks strength, but because energy has been redirected for prolonged vigilance. Over time, this physical signaling reshapes how the body interprets normal sensations. Tension becomes familiar. Rapid breathing feels ordinary. Digestive discomfort becomes background noise. The absence of immediate pain creates the illusion that nothing is wrong, yet biology is quietly adjusting. Cells respond to repeated hormonal exposure by changing their sensitivity. Systems that once switched on and off easily begin to remain partially activated. The body learns, through repetition, that stress is not temporary, and it reorganizes itself accordingly. This adaptation is not inherently harmful. In fact, it demonstrates the body's intelligence. The human organism is remarkably skilled at learning patterns and responding to its environment. If stress signals arrive every day, the body assumes that this state is necessary for survival. Muscles remain slightly contracted. Attention narrows. Emotional responses become sharper or, in some cases, muted. These changes reflect efficiency under perceived threat, not weakness or failure. The body is doing exactly what it has evolved to do when it believes conditions are uncertain or unsafe. Understanding stress as a physical signal also explains why logic alone cannot resolve it. Telling someone to relax does not alter hormone levels. Rational reassurance does not immediately quiet the nervous system. The body responds to signals, not instructions. Safety must be experienced physically through consistent cues such as predictable routines, adequate rest, supportive environments, and moments of genuine calm. When these signals are absent, the body continues to prepare for challenge regardless of conscious intention. The physical nature of stress also clarifies why its effects appear in unexpected places. Skin changes, headaches, digestive irregularities, immune sensitivity, and muscle pain may all share a common origin in prolonged stress signaling. These symptoms are not isolated problems. They are expressions of a system that has been operating under sustained pressure. The body does not compartmentalize stress. It distributes its effects across systems that are constantly communicating with one another. What makes stress particularly complex is that it often becomes invisible to the person experiencing it. Because the changes occur gradually, the body's new state feels normal. People adapt not only biologically, but perceptually. They forget what calm feels like. They mistake constant alertness for productivity or responsibility. Yet beneath this adaptation, the physical signal continues, shaping internal processes without rest. Stress becomes less of an event and more of an environment in which the body lives. This perspective changes how health should be approached. Instead of focusing only on symptoms, it invites attention to signals. What messages is the body receiving daily? What does the nervous system interpret as safe or threatening? Health becomes less about control and more about communication. When the body receives consistent signals of safety, stability, and support, it begins to shift again. Hormone patterns soften. Breathing deepens. Muscles release tension. These changes do not occur instantly, but they are evidence of the body's capacity to respond to new information. Viewing stress as a physical signal also removes moral judgment from the experience. It reframes stress-related challenges as biological responses rather than personal shortcomings. The body is not failing when it reacts to pressure. It is listening. It is responding. And it is always adjusting based on the information it receives. This understanding creates space for compassion, both toward oneself and others, recognizing that many behaviors, sensations, and limitations are rooted not in character, but in physiology. The most important implication of this idea is that stress is not an enemy to be eliminated, but a signal to be understood. Like pain, it communicates that something requires attention. When ignored, it grows louder. When acknowledged and addressed through supportive conditions, it quiets naturally. The body does not resist healing. It moves toward balance when given the opportunity. Stress, in this sense, becomes a teacher, revealing how closely the mind, body, and environment are linked, and how deeply health depends on the signals we live within every day, shaping internal rhythms, cellular behavior, and long-term well-being through patterns that remain active beneath conscious awareness and continue influencing the body even when attention shifts elsewhere. The brain initiates stress responses by interpreting perceived threats, and this process begins far earlier than conscious thought. Before a person has time to name what they are feeling, the brain has already assessed the environment and decided whether protection is needed. This assessment is not philosophical or emotional in nature. It is biological. The brain continuously scans for patterns that suggest danger, uncertainty, or loss of control, and it does so using past experiences, memory, and sensory input. What matters most is not whether a threat is objectively real, but whether it is perceived as significant enough to demand action. This is why imagined pressure can produce real physical reactions. A critical email, an unresolved conflict, or the anticipation of failure can activate the same neural circuits as a physical threat. The brain evolved to keep humans alive in unpredictable environments, and it favors speed over accuracy. When something feels uncertain or overwhelming, the brain does not pause to verify facts. It responds immediately, sending signals through the nervous system to prepare the body. In evolutionary terms, a false alarm was safer than hesitation. That same protective bias still operates today. Once the brain interprets a situation as threatening, it activates networks responsible for survival. These networks communicate through electrical signals and chemical messengers, rapidly informing the rest of the body that conditions have changed. Heart rate adjusts, breathing becomes more alert, and attention narrows. The body does not wait for conscious approval. It trusts the brain's interpretation and follows its lead. This coordination happens so quickly that by the time a person notices feeling stressed, the response is already underway. The difficulty arises because modern stressors are often abstract. They do not have clear beginnings or endings. Unlike a physical threat that appears and disappears, psychological stress can linger for days or months. The brain, however, responds as if the threat remains active. Each reminder, each thought, each unresolved concern reactivates the same pathways. The body receives repeated instructions to prepare, even when there is no opportunity for resolution through action. Over time, the brain learns that this state of alertness is necessary, and it maintains it automatically. Another important aspect of this process is that the brain relies heavily on memory. Past experiences shape how current situations are interpreted. If the brain has learned that certain environments, responsibilities, or social interactions lead to negative outcomes, it may initiate stress responses preemptively. This is not pessimism. It is prediction. The brain is attempting to prevent harm by preparing the body in advance. Unfortunately, this predictive mechanism can keep the body in a constant state of readiness, even when circumstances have changed. The brain's interpretation of threat also explains why different people respond differently to the same situation. Two individuals can face identical circumstances, yet their bodies react in distinct ways. This difference is not a matter of willpower. It reflects how each brain has learned to evaluate risk based on personal history, biology, and context. Stress is therefore deeply individual, shaped by unique neural patterns rather than universal rules. Importantly, the brain does not distinguish between internal and external threats. A critical thought can trigger the same response as an external challenge. Worry, self-judgment, and anticipation all function as signals that the brain takes seriously. When these internal messages repeat frequently, the brain treats them as evidence that the environment is unsafe. The body responds accordingly, even though the source of stress exists only within thought. This understanding challenges the idea that stress is something people choose. The brain operates largely outside conscious awareness, and its interpretations are automatic. While behavior and mindset can influence long-term patterns, the initial response is reflexive. Recognizing this removes blame from the experience of stress. It reframes it as a protective reflex rather than a personal failure. The same mechanism that interprets threat can also interpret safety. When the brain receives consistent signals of predictability, support, and rest, it gradually reduces its protective stance. This shift does not happen instantly because the brain prioritizes survival over comfort. It needs repeated evidence that conditions have changed. Over time, however, new patterns form. Stress responses soften. Attention broadens. The body receives permission to stand down. Understanding that stress begins with the brain's interpretation of threat highlights the importance of environment, routine, and internal dialogue. These factors are not superficial. They are inputs that the brain uses to decide how the body should function. Health, in this context, becomes less about eliminating challenges and more about reshaping how the brain evaluates them, allowing the nervous system to move between alertness and rest with greater flexibility and balance as the body gradually learns that constant vigilance is no longer required. Repeated exposure to stress gradually trains the body to remain alert, and this process happens so slowly that it often goes unnoticed. At first, stress feels temporary, tied to specific situations that come and go. The body activates, responds, and then returns to balance. But when stress becomes frequent, the nervous system begins to assume that alertness is no longer an exception. It becomes the rule. The body stops waiting for recovery and instead builds its daily functioning around readiness, shaping how energy is used, how attention is directed, and how internal systems communicate. This conditioning is not a conscious decision. The body learns through repetition. Each time stress signals arrive, the nervous system strengthens the pathways that support vigilance. Muscles remain slightly engaged even at rest. Breathing patterns subtly change. The heart adapts to quicker responses. Over time, these shifts feel familiar. What once felt tense now feels normal. The absence of calm is no longer noticed because the body has adjusted its expectations. This is how constant alertness becomes a baseline rather than a response. One of the most significant changes occurs in how the body manages energy. In a state of ongoing stress, energy is allocated towards systems that support rapid response rather than long-term maintenance. Processes such as deep digestion, tissue repair, and restorative sleep receive less priority. This does not cause immediate collapse. Instead, it creates a slow accumulation of imbalance. The body continues to function but with reduced efficiency. Fatigue becomes persistent. Recovery takes longer. These changes are often interpreted as aging or lifestyle issues, when in reality they reflect a nervous system that has learned to stay on guard. Attention also changes under chronic stress. The brain narrows its focus to monitor potential problems, reducing its capacity for rest, creativity, and reflection. This narrowed attention can feel productive in the short term, creating a sense of urgency and control. Over time, however, it limits flexibility. The mind becomes less able to shift out of problem-solving mode. Even during quiet moments, the body remains prepared for interruption. This constant readiness can make stillness uncomfortable and relaxation unfamiliar. Sleep offers another clear example of this conditioning. When the body is accustomed to alertness, sleep becomes lighter and more fragmented. The brain continues scanning for signals, waking the body at minor disturbances. This is not insomnia caused by poor habits alone. It is the nervous system maintaining vigilance during a state that should allow recovery. The result is sleep that appears sufficient in duration but lacks depth, leaving the body under-restored and reinforcing the cycle of stress. Emotionally, this state of constant alertness can create heightened sensitivity or emotional flattening. Some people become more reactive, responding strongly to small challenges. Others feel disconnected, as if emotions are muted. Both responses reflect the same underlying process. The body is conserving resources and prioritizing survival. Emotional nuance becomes less important than readiness. These shifts are not character flaws. They are biological adaptations to prolonged stress signaling. What makes this process particularly challenging is that it is self-reinforcing. As the body adapts to constant alertness, it becomes more sensitive to stress triggers. Smaller challenges now activate stronger responses because the system is already primed. This creates the impression that stress is increasing, when in fact the threshold for activation has lowered. The body has learned that it must respond quickly, and it does so even when the situation does not require it. The redefinition of normal that occurs under chronic stress affects how people evaluate their own health. Many assume that constant tension, low-level fatigue, and mental restlessness are simply part of adult life. Because these states develop gradually, there is no clear moment when something feels wrong. The body adapts quietly, and the new baseline feels ordinary. This normalization delays recognition and makes change more difficult, not because recovery is impossible, but because the body has forgotten another way of functioning. Despite this conditioning, the nervous system remains flexible. The same learning process that establishes constant alertness can also establish safety. When the body receives consistent signals of rest, predictability, and support, it begins to recalibrate. This requires time because the body must be convinced that alertness is no longer necessary. Small, repeated experiences of calm matter more than dramatic interventions. Gradually, the baseline shifts again. Muscles release. Breathing slows. Attention widens. The body remembers that readiness does not need to be permanent, and that balance is not something to achieve once, but a dynamic state that the nervous system can return to when it is allowed to relearn what normal truly feels like. Long-term stress alters core functions in the body in ways that are subtle, distributed, and often misunderstood, because it does not target a single organ or system. Instead, it reshapes how systems interact with one another over time. Hormones, immune responses, digestion, sleep, and muscle tone are not independent processes. They operate as a coordinated network, and chronic stress acts like a constant background signal that changes how this network prioritizes its work. These changes rarely feel dramatic at first. They accumulate quietly, revealing themselves only after the body has been adapting for a long time. Hormonal balance is one of the earliest areas affected. Stress-related hormones are designed to rise and fall quickly, supporting short-term action and then clearing from the system. When stress becomes ongoing, these hormones circulate more frequently or remain elevated longer than intended. This does not mean the body is malfunctioning. It means the body believes it must stay prepared. Over time, other hormones that support growth, repair, and rest receive less emphasis. The result is not immediate illness, but a gradual shift in how the body allocates resources, subtly favoring survival over restoration. The immune system responds in a similarly complex way. In short bursts of stress, immune activity can increase, preparing the body for potential injury. With prolonged stress, however, immune signaling becomes uneven. Some responses are suppressed, while others become overactive. This imbalance can make the body slower to recover from minor challenges or more reactive to harmless stimuli. Importantly, this is not weakness. It is the immune system responding to repeated instructions that the environment is demanding and unpredictable. Its behavior reflects adaptation, not failure. Digestion is another system deeply influenced by chronic stress. When the body prioritizes alertness, digestion becomes secondary. Blood flow shifts away from the digestive tract, and muscular contractions that support digestion slow or become irregular. Over time, this can lead to discomfort, changes in appetite, or altered absorption of nutrients. These effects often appear disconnected from stress because they involve physical sensations rather than emotions. Yet they are directly linked to how the nervous system manages energy under prolonged pressure. Sleep patterns also change under long-term stress, often without obvious awareness. The body may still enter sleep, but the quality of that sleep shifts. Lighter stages become more dominant, and deeper restorative phases occur less consistently. The brain remains partially vigilant, prepared to respond. This ongoing alertness reduces the body's ability to fully recover, creating a cycle where fatigue increases stress sensitivity, and stress further disrupts sleep. The person may spend enough hours in bed, yet still wake feeling unrest without understanding why. Muscle tension is one of the most visible yet least questioned effects of chronic stress. Muscles are activated as part of the body's readiness response, preparing for movement or protection. When stress is persistent, muscles may remain partially contracted even during rest. This low-level tension often goes unnoticed until discomfort or stiffness develops. The body does not release this tension because it has learned that relaxation may not be safe. Over time, posture, movement patterns, and physical comfort are subtly altered. These physiological changes rarely occur in isolation. A shift in sleep affects hormonal regulation. Hormonal changes influence immune function. Immune imbalance affects energy and mood. The body operates as an integrated whole, and stress alters the tone of this integration. This is why chronic stress can feel confusing. Symptoms appear in different areas at different times, creating the impression of unrelated problems. In reality, they share a common origin in prolonged stress signaling. One of the most challenging aspects of these changes is the absence of early warning signs. The body does not sound an alarm when these systems begin to shift. It adapts quietly, preserving function as best it can. People often continue to perform daily tasks, unaware that their internal balance has changed. This quiet adaptation can delay recognition and care, allowing stress-related patterns to become deeply established before attention is drawn to them. Understanding these effects reframes how health challenges should be interpreted. Instead of asking what is broken, it becomes more useful to ask what the body has been responding to. Long-term stress does not damage systems through sudden force. It reshapes them through persistence. When this persistence is reduced and signals of safety are reintroduced, these same systems can reorganize again. Hormonal rhythms can stabilize. Immune balance can improve. Digestion can regain ease. Sleep can deepen. Muscles can release their holding patterns, not all at once, but gradually as the body receives consistent evidence that it no longer needs to operate under constant demand and can redirect its remarkable capacity toward restoration, regulation, and resilience once again. The same biological systems that adapt to stress also hold the capacity to recover, and this recovery begins when the body receives consistent signals of safety. Safety, in biological terms, is not an idea or a belief. It is a pattern of sensory information that tells the nervous system it can reduce vigilance. Predictability, gentle rhythm, supportive social contact, and physical rest all function as messages that reshape how the body interprets its environment. When these signals appear regularly, the nervous system begins to adjust its tone, allowing stress responses to soften. Recovery from stress does not require the complete absence of challenge. The body does not need perfection to heal. It needs contrast. Moments of calm provide that contrast by showing the nervous system that alertness is not the only option. When calm is repeated, even in small doses, neural pathways associated with safety grow stronger. Breathing becomes slower and deeper. Heart rate variability increases. Muscles begin to release tension without conscious effort. These changes are signs that the body is shifting out of survival mode and back toward regulation. One of the most important aspects of this process is time. The body adapts to stress gradually, and it recovers gradually as well. Sudden attempts to force relaxation can feel uncomfortable or ineffective because the nervous system does not yet trust that safety will last. Trust is built through repetition. When the body repeatedly experiences rest without interruption, it learns that it does not need to prepare for immediate threat. This learning is biological, not psychological. It occurs through changes in neural signaling and hormonal rhythms. Environment plays a powerful role in signaling safety. Consistent daily routines reduce uncertainty. Familiar spaces reduce sensory load. Supportive human connection provides cues of protection that the nervous system recognizes instinctively. These factors work together, reinforcing one another. Even when stressors remain present, a stable environment can buffer their impact by reminding the body that not all moments require readiness. Physical practices also contribute to recovery, not because they eliminate stress, but because they provide clear signals of safety. Gentle movement, steady breathing, and regular sleep schedules communicate predictability to the nervous system. Over time, these signals recalibrate internal rhythms. The body begins to conserve less energy for defense and redirect more toward repair and balance. This shift supports immune regulation, hormonal stability, and emotional flexibility. Importantly, recovery is not linear. The body may return to alertness when stress reappears, and this does not mean progress has been lost. Flexibility is a sign of health. A nervous system that can move between alertness and rest is functioning well. The goal is not constant calm, but the ability to return to calm when conditions allow. Each return strengthens the body's confidence in safety. As safety signals accumulate, the baseline state of the body changes. What once felt unfamiliar begins to feel natural. Rest becomes easier. Attention broadens. Physical comfort increases. These changes are not dramatic, but they are meaningful. They reflect the body's ability to learn new patterns when given the right information. Understanding recovery in this way transforms how stress is viewed. Stress is not something to be defeated, but something to be balanced. The body is not resisting healing. It is waiting for evidence that healing is possible. When that evidence appears consistently, the same systems that once maintained vigilance gradually support restoration, allowing the body to reorganize itself around stability, resilience, and a renewed sense of internal ease that emerges not from force, but from the quiet accumulation of safety over time.